Hey, welcome back to Home Studio Pro. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm looking forward to this video. Kind of an experiment with microphone pickup patterns. Sometimes known as polar patterns, it's essentially the way this mic is able to hear me, the area, the landscape of where it's listening. On a mic like this, it's pretty versatile. You can actually select up to 5 different polar patterns. I'll give you a closer look at this, and by the way, later we'll do voice samples of each. We'll get into some ambient noise, like I'll play some background noise, and you can see how the mic hears it or doesn't, depending on the polar pattern. Front of the mic is close to me. The back side of the mic is on the far side of your screen over there. So it's got, on the far left, 3 different low cut options, flat. You can cut at 60 hertz, you can cut at 100 hertz, and on the near side, it's got 3 different options for pad. 0 dB is where I've got it right now. You can also cut 10 or 20 dB respectively. But right in the back middle of this microphone are those 5 different polar patterns you can select from. I'll detail what they're called in just a second. But even the little drawing, the diagram on there, I'm not sure most people even correlate this. That is an interpretation, a visual of the actual pickup pattern. For example, on the far left, it's a circular pattern. On the far right, we're omnidirectional. On the far right, it's a figure of 8. Yeah, it does kind of look like that 8. And so I'll switch through all these patterns. We'll give you samples here in just a few minutes, but omnidirectional, wide cardioid, cardioid, super cardioid, and figure of 8 are my samples here, or are my patterns here. Now, I am indeed on cardioid mode right now. I just had to actually double check that before the video. So you've been hearing that. I should also tell you that you're hearing this microphone, and you will be hearing it through the remainder of this video, fully processed through my signal chain. I'm using the Universal Audio Apollo Twin X. There is some expansion on this mic, there is some EQ, and there's ultimately some compression with an LA2A at the very end. So just know that going in, this is already a fully processed sample, but how will it sound different as I run it through these 5 different polar patterns? So I'm going to switch and do this all in real time so you can see it. First, let's begin with omnidirectional. Now this should hear me all the way around the mic. Okay, we're now on omnidirectional mode, and listen critically. Put some headphones on. Does this sound different? Feels to me like there's a lesser bass response. This microphone should be able to hear me almost all the way around. I mean, for example, look at this. I'm talking now into the back of the microphone, and it doesn't sound a whole lot different. I mean, it does sound different here on the side, right, as I talk into the side, but it doesn't sound a lot different as I talk into the very front of the microphone. And that would make sense, right? Omnidirectional. You can see where it's picking up on the top and the different frequencies of where it's hearing it best. On the bottom is the frequency response curve. So pretty flat. It's got that presence boost somewhere between, let's say, 6 and 10 or 11,000 hertz. That's to be expected. Pretty flat everywhere else, but that is what omnidirectional sounds like. Now, I don't use this one a lot, but it would make sense if you were trying to capture the sound of a room or a musical performance that was in a live venue. Let me play you some background crowd noise off just the Bose speaker here, and I want you to hear how this sounds. I'll talk through it in just a second. You can kind of hear how this picks up my voice as it competes with the crowd noise. I mean, you can hear that crowd noise in the background. It's fairly loud. So my voice is able to cut through it. I mean, it's not overwhelming me, but it does kind of give you a sense of how you can hear that noise, versus eventually when I get to super cardioid, it's only going to be picking up right in front of me here, so it should do a better job of rejecting that. Let me even turn it up a little bit more. I feel like it needs that. So this is how it would sound if I was trying to compete. Again, I would not do this. I would not really use an omnidirectional pattern with background noise that I was trying to compete against. That doesn't seem like a wise idea, but I want you to understand how that sounds. Okay, that's omnidirectional. Let's move on to wide cardioid. There's an airplane going above. Maybe you heard that through the omnidirectional before I went to wide cardioid. So this one has more of a front-facing pattern, but it's wider than cardioid. It's way wider than super cardioid. You can kind of see the the shape of which it projects, and I'll talk through the side of the microphone. Now I'm talking in the back of the microphone, so you could still hear it. And there is a little bit of a lobe in the back of sensitivity, but overall, like there is an extreme difference that I can't talk directly into the back of the microphone. This one is now directional. In the cardioid mode, it becomes directional to a great degree. The frequency response, honestly, is not that different, but it is important you know that this will pick up your voice and the sounds a little bit differently in terms of characteristics depending on what pattern you're using. But again, just to talk through the side and the back of the microphone here, obviously that sounds really bad because it's not meant to be talked into the back anymore. It's not using both sides of the microphone. So that's what wide cardioid sounds like. Let's give you that crowd noise again. And maybe what you're hearing here is that this is not making it into the microphone as much. The speaker is over here to my right, your left. And the microphone is pointing in this general direction. But what if I turn it this way? Now is it cutting down even more? Like you can hear me cut through pretty plainly. And the volume is still up pretty high. See that when I point it this way? I can even hear that, and there is some expansion to even cut down on that, but you can plainly see now all of a sudden it really does matter which way the microphone is pointed. And all this is part of, mic technique as well too. Cardioid mode. Okay, let's go there now. I like, by the way, that when I switch these patterns on this mic, it doesn't make a huge popping sound or doesn't blow your ears out. Okay, cardioid mode, honestly, is where I would leave the mic for most home studio applications. And that is so I get a little bit of breathing room as I talk and move around here. I use cardioid on the U87. It kind of gives me an area to work in here. If I'm good with my microphone technique, obviously I'm not going to be hanging out over here, but it gives you the idea that I kind of have a nice space to roam around freely. I don't need to sit right on a direct line straight out of the microphone as I would with supercardioid or hypercardioid mode. By the way, those terms, I might have been using them interchangeably. They kind of are. But cardioid mode, little heart-shaped pattern. Again, same thing here. If I start talking into the side of the microphone, it sounds really bad. And if I talk into the back of the microphone, it does not work, right? So now we're starting to get a lot more directional with our pickup pattern. The frequency response, again, it's a little bit different, not entirely different from any of the other patterns, but you can see there on the top, like the shape of the pickup pattern here, kind of like a heart that's pointed towards the subject it's trying to pick up. So now we're a little bit tighter in our pattern, right? We're on cardioid, we're not at super, but let's listen to that background crowd noise again. And watch if I turn the microphone this way. Okay, so that's honestly cutting out a lot of the crowd noise. Now it's weird because I can easily hear it through my headphones right now. So I'm trying to decipher what you're actually hearing through the microphone. But see how I'm able to cut a lot of that out by putting this on a tighter pattern? And watch when I turn it this way. I mean, it's now pointed directly at the source, so it's going to pick that up. But if I angle it a little bit this way, that'll help. And watch this. If I turn it this way, if I turn it totally this way, now it's like a 180. The back of the mic, actually, where I'd really want it is right about here. Kind of like a 135. You can't hear that as well. I feel like I'm cutting through okay. Is it coming through? Yeah, a little bit, but it's down at like negative 35 dB. So, again, this just goes to show you how different pickup patterns can affect what the microphone is hearing, how your voice sounds. Not a whole lot, maybe a little bit of tonality and a little bit of depth. And obviously you want to choose the right pattern, but you can also influence your sound based on the pattern. Okay, let's get into supercardioid. Okay, now we're on supercardioid, and what you need to know here is that this is very directional. There is a little bit of a lobe in the back, which maybe I can kind of show you here, but listen to how that sounds, right? I'm talking into the very back of the microphone. That does not sound great. It sounds very low boosted. It's not at all like the front of the microphone. Frequency response, maybe a little kind of a weird dip there at, I don't know, 2,500, but overall slight presence push. It's pretty flat. I got to say, I really like that frequency curve, and I like this pickup pattern quite a bit. If you're using a condenser in a less than optimal space, I mean, supercardioid is going to keep your pattern tight. It's going to reject all of this other noise around the side. Well, let me talk 90 degrees into this microphone. It's pointing this way right now, right? So it's rejecting me pretty good. Talking right into the side of it here. Now I'm right into the back of it here. So it's doing a pretty good job of cutting out all that extra noise. Now let's play the crowd noise. Okay, now I'm pointing it towards the crowd noise right now. It's angled in that direction. And you can hear it, right? Because generally coming from that way. Okay, now let me just flip it this way. Now, this seems to me pretty good. Now, I'm not reading an audiobook here, and I'm not doing a voiceover track professionally, but you can see how I'm able to cut down on all of that noise. Now, watch me do the quick A/B here. We're on supercardioid. It's the most focused polar pattern there is. Let me quickly switch to circular, to that omnidirectional. Let me show you what that sounds like. Same crowd noise here. Ready? Like, now you can hear a lot more of that. Now my voice is like competing with that crowd noise because this microphone is picking stuff up from all directions, right? So it's harder for my voice to compete with that. Clearly, right? Like it's just not cutting through the same way. So let's go back to supercardioid real fast. And you hear that? It does take the microphone a quick second to adjust. It kind of faded everything back. I'll do that one more time. So here it is, supercardioid. It's doable enough, right? Give it a few seconds here. Watch on circular. There it is right now. It's picking up everything. I'm having a hard time competing. Like, you can still hear me, but I'm having a hard time competing my voice with that background noise. Hear that? Now we're back into supercardioid. Okay, let's end the crowd noise there. But hopefully that demonstration alone was worth this video, because that's kind of the point here, is the polar patterns do matter, not as much for sound, a little bit, but obviously what you're trying to eliminate from your sound. Okay, now figure of 8, I guess you could use this in a 2-person, 1 microphone setup. Let's go there now. Okay, so now I'm talking into the front of the microphone on figure of 8, and now I'm talking into the back of the microphone on figure of 8. It always does seem to have a different tone. Maybe there's some phasing issues here as I talk into the back, but you know, you could use the, oh, look at me, 90 degrees. Wow. It's not picking up much there, is it? You can honestly see how in a worst case scenario, now this doesn't do stereo. I should be very clear. This is not a stereo mic where you're getting 2 signals. This is just literally hearing and putting out a mono channel of both sides of the microphone. I guess if it was me and somebody else, but then we'd both need to be talking this close to the microphone. Like, how awkward is that we'd be this far apart, like both trying to spit and talk into this microphone? And I mean, like, not intentionally spit, but it's a little bit too close for comfort. Give everybody their own microphone. So I know sometimes in mid-side recordings, and there are recording techniques of why you'd want to use the figure of 8 pattern, but to be perfectly honest, for you in a home studio situation, kind of the core audience of this channel, there's not really a straightforward reason to be doing that. All right, so that's figure of 8. Let me go back to supercardioid. I feel like that was maybe my favorite. Any one of the cardioids will do you best. It just depends on what you're trying to do. But hopefully some of that made sense. Hopefully you got some good examples there of how the pickup pattern really does affect the microphone's performance in a room. Now, I've also done this entire video in an acoustically treated room, so think about that. I was playing crowd noise, but think if your problem was echoes and reverberations, that's what you're cutting down on. I was using the example of crowd noise, but really you're fighting your own space sometimes in how it sounds. And that's why the right pickup pattern is important to your microphone. So know what your mic is capable of, the different options it has, or its limitations in terms of pickup patterns. Hey, thanks for hanging around this long to the very end of the video. If you found this useful, thumbs up on it. That would greatly help me out in this channel. And also subscribe. You obviously like this type of stuff, and I've got lots more coming your way in the very near future. See you then.